The sun had just begun its descent over the horizon, casting long shadows across the sprawling cityscape of New Arcadia. This was a city of steel and glass, where towering skyscrapers reached for the heavens, and the hum of advanced technology filled the air. Yet, even in this metropolis of the future, there was a sense of timelessness, of feeling that, no matter how far humanity advanced, some things would always remain the same. The pulse of life, the drive for discovery, the eternal dance between light and shadow. In a quiet corner of this bustling city, in a penthouse overlooking the vast expanse of the city, sat Alex, a man of both legend and mystery. He was tall and lean, his frame suggesting a life of action and discipline. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, seemed to hold the weight of countless battles and victories, each one leaving an indelible mark on his soul. His hands, though steady, bore the faint scars of a life lived on the edge, where the line between success and failure was often razor-thin. Alex was not an ordinary man. He was a hero, a savior of worlds, and a master of space travel and warfare technology. His name was known across the galaxy, whispered in awe and respect, a symbol of hope for those who faced insurmountable odds. Yet, despite his fame, Alex was a man of few words, preferring action over grand speeches and results over empty promises. The room was dimly lit, with only the soft glow of holographic screens illuminating the space. These screens displayed a myriad of information: star maps, technical schematics, and data streams from across the galaxy. Alex had always been a man who thrived on knowledge, understanding that in a universe as vast and unpredictable as this, information was the most potent weapon one could wield. As he studied the data in front of him, his thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime, signaling an incoming transmission. Alex's brow furrowed slightly as he activated the communication link. A figure appeared on the screen, bathed in the flickering light of distant stars, a hologram of a Tyrionian envoy, draped in regal robes, with an expression that conveyed both urgency and desperation. "Master Alex." The envoy began, his voice trembling slightly, "I come to you with a plea from King Valter of Tyrion. Our world is under imminent threat from the Caracolak Empire. They have already decimated our outer defenses. And it is only a matter of time before they breach our planetary shield. We have heard of your unparalleled skills and the victories you have achieved across the galaxy. You are our last hope. Please, will you help us?" For a moment, there was silence. Alex's gaze remained fixed on the hologram, his mind processing the gravity of the situation. The Caracolak Empire was a name that struck fear into the hearts of many a civilization that thrived on dark energy, a force as mysterious as it was malevolent. They were conquerors, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake, consuming entire worlds to fuel their insatiable hunger for power. Alex had encountered them once before, years ago, and he knew firsthand the devastation they could unleash. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled as he considered the request. Tyrion was one of the most powerful and wealthy planets in the galaxy, a beacon of prosperity and technological advancement. If even they were on the brink of collapse, it spoke volumes about the strength of their enemy. But Alex was not a man who made decisions lightly. He had seen too much, lost too much, to rush headlong into battle without careful consideration. "Tell me more about the situation," Alex finally said, his voice calm and measured. The envoy nodded, relief washing over his features as he continued. "The Caracolak Empire has deployed a fleet unlike anything we've ever encountered. Their ships are powered by dark energy, making them nearly impervious to our weapons. Our scientists have tried to find a way to counter this energy, but so far, nothing has worked. Our planetary shield is holding for now, but we fear it won't last much longer. King Valter believes that with your expertise, you could find a way to turn the tide." Alex listened intently, his mind already racing with possibilities. Dark energy, an enigma that had baffled scientists and strategists alike. It was a force that defied conventional understanding, a power that seemed to draw strength from the very void of space itself. But Alex had faced impossible odds before, and he knew that even the most formidable challenges had a weakness, a flaw that could be exploited. "I'll need access to all your data on dark energy," Alex said, his tone decisive. "Every experiment, every theory, no matter how obscure. I'll also need a team: engineers, scientists, tactical experts, and I'll need to see your defense systems firsthand." The envoy nodded eagerly. "Of course, Master Alex. King Valter has already authorized full access to our resources. Anything you need, it will be provided." Alex stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. Prepare for our arrival. We'll be there within the day." The transmission ended, and the room fell into silence once more. But this time it was a silence filled with purpose, with the anticipation of what was to come. Alex turned to the nearest console and activated a secure channel. Within moments, the faces of his most trusted allies appeared on the screen, each one a master in their own right, handpicked by Alex for their skills and loyalty. "Prepare the ship," Alex commanded. "We're going to Tyrion. This isn't just another mission, this is war." His allies nodded, their expressions as serious as his own. They had fought alongside Alex in countless battles, and they knew that when he spoke with such gravity, the stakes were as high as they could get. As the preparations began, Alex took a moment to gaze out of the penthouse window, his eyes tracing the horizon where the sun had now fully set. The city below was alive with lights, a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. But beyond this world, in the cold expanse of space, another battle was brewing, one that would test every ounce of his skill and determination. He allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He had spent his life fighting, saving worlds, and defeating enemies that most people could only imagine in their darkest nightmares. Yet, with each victory, the weight on his shoulders grew heavier. The galaxy was vast, and for every enemy vanquished, a new threat would arise. It was a never-ending cycle, and Alex knew that he could never rest as long as there were lives to save. But this time it felt different. The Caracolak Empire was unlike any foe he had faced before. Their mastery of dark energy was something that defied the natural order, something that should not exist. And yet, it did, and it was up to him to stop it. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door sliding open behind him. He turned to see one of his closest allies, a woman named Juno, enter the room. Juno was a tactical genius, with a mind as sharp as a blade and a resolve as unyielding as iron. She had fought alongside Alex in some of the most dangerous missions, and he trusted her implicitly. "Everything's ready," Juno said, her voice calm but edged with the same seriousness that Alex felt. "The ship is prepped, and the team is assembled. We'll be in Tyrion within 8 hours." Alex nodded, appreciating her efficiency. "Good. We'll need every second we can get." Juno studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his. "You faced them before, haven't you? The Caracolak." Alex's gaze hardened as he nodded. "Once. Years ago. It was a small skirmish, nothing compared to what we're about to face. But even then, they were formidable. This time they're coming in full force. Tyrion is their next target, and if they succeed, they'll only grow stronger." Juno's expression didn't waver, but Alex could see the determination in her eyes. "Then we'll make sure they don't succeed." Alex allowed himself a small, grim smile. "That's the plan." With that, they left the penthouse, descending to the underground hangar where their ship awaited. It was a sleek, advanced craft equipped with the latest in space travel technology, designed for speed and stealth. As they boarded, Alex felt a familiar sense of anticipation, the adrenaline beginning to course through his veins. This was what he lived for: the challenge, the fight, the chance to make a difference. As the ship powered up, the engines emitting a low hum, Alex took his seat at the helm. He glanced around at his team, each one ready, each one willing to follow him into the unknown. They were more than just allies, they were a family forged in the fires of battle, bound by a shared purpose. "Set course for Tyrion," Alex ordered, his voice steady. The ship lifted off, leaving the city of New Arcadia behind, and within moments they were hurtling through the vastness of space. The stars streaked past them, distant points of light in the infinite darkness. As they traveled, Alex's mind remained focused, analyzing every piece of information they had on the Caracolak Empire, strategizing, planning. There was no room for error, no margin for failure. Tyrion's fate, and possibly the fate of the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Hours passed in silence, each member of the team lost in their thoughts, preparing for the battle that awaited them. Finally, the planet Tyrion came into view, a shining jewel in the darkness of space. But even from this distance, Alex could see the signs of conflict, the faint glimmers of energy shields, the distant flashes of battle in the upper atmosphere. This was it. The battle for Tyrion was about to begin, and Alex knew that he and his team would need every ounce of skill, courage, and ingenuity to emerge victorious. As the ship descended towards the planet, Alex felt a surge of determination. He had saved worlds before, and he would do it again. The Caracolak Empire might be powerful, but they had never faced someone like him. and he intended to show them exactly why he was the most feared and respected warrior in the galaxy. The planet Tyrion loomed larger with each passing second, its surface a breathtaking tapestry of vibrant greens and blues, crisscrossed by vast oceans and towering mountain ranges. Even from space, the planet's beauty was undeniable, a stark contrast to the dire situation unfolding on its surface. Alex and his team could see the faint shimmer of the planetary shield, a translucent dome of energy that encased the entire planet, barely holding back the dark forces that threatened to consume it. As their ship approached the outer atmosphere, Alex's fingers danced over the control panel, expertly guiding the vessel through the layers of turbulence. The ship's sleek design allowed it to cut through the atmospheric resistance with ease, its advanced shielding absorbing the heat generated by the rapid descent. Below them, the capital city of Tyrion came into view, a sprawling metropolis that stretched as far as the eye could see, its architecture a blend of futuristic design and ancient grandeur. The city was a marvel of engineering, with towering spires of glass and metal that reached into the sky, connected by intricate networks of bridges and skyways. At the center of it all stood the royal palace, a massive structure of gleaming white stone and crystal, its towers capped with golden domes that sparkled in the sunlight. But even from this height, Alex could see the signs of battle, plumes of smoke rising from distant parts of the city, the charred remains of buildings that had been reduced to rubble, and the ominous presence of the Caracolak fleet hovering in the upper atmosphere. Like vultures waiting to descend upon their prey. "Brace for landing," Alex commanded, his voice steady and authoritative. The ship descended rapidly, cutting through the final layers of the atmosphere before slowing to a controlled hover above the royal palace. As they approached the landing pad, Alex could see a contingent of Tyrionian guards waiting to receive them, their armor gleaming in the sunlight, though their expressions were grim. The ship touched down with a soft thud, and the hum of the engines began to die down. Alex stood from his seat, his movements fluid and deliberate, and turned to his team. Juno was already on her feet, her sharp eyes scanning the landing pad outside. Beside her stood Rook, a massive, powerfully built man with a shaven head and a quiet intensity in his gaze. He was a weapons expert, and his presence alone was enough to give most enemies pause. Next to Rook was Leah, a petite woman with an air of calm confidence and the keen intellect of a seasoned strategist. Finally, there was Terran, a brilliant engineer whose mind was as agile as the hands that created the advanced technology they relied on. "This is it," Alex said, his voice low but filled with purpose. "We're about to meet King Valter. We'll need to be ready to move quickly. Every second counts." The team nodded, each member understanding the gravity of the situation. Without another word, they moved to the exit ramp, which lowered with a soft hiss of hydraulics. As they stepped out onto the landing pad, they were met by a wave of warm, humid air, tinged with the faint scent of burning metal, a reminder of the battles that had already taken place. The Tyrionian guards snapped to attention as Alex and his team approached, their expressions a mix of respect and desperation. At the front of the group stood a tall, regal figure, dressed in ornate armor, adorned with intricate patterns of gold and silver. His face was lined with age and worry, but his posture was that of a man who had spent a lifetime in command. This was King Valter, the ruler of Tyrion. "Welcome to Tyrion," King Valter said, his voice deep and resonant, though there was an unmistakable edge of urgency. "We are honored to have you here, Master Alex. Your reputation precedes you." Alex inclined his head in a respectful nod. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "As do I," Valter replied, his gaze sweeping over Alex's team. "But we have little time for pleasantries. The situation is dire, and I fear we are running out of time." "Then let's not waste any," Alex said, his tone decisive. "Show us your defense systems, and give us full access to your data on dark energy. We need to understand what we're dealing with." King Valter gestured for them to follow, and the group moved quickly towards the entrance of the palace. The halls they passed through were grand and imposing, lined with columns of polished marble and tapestries that depicted the rich history of Tyrion. Yet, despite the opulence, there was a palpable tension in the air, as if the very walls of the palace were bracing for the inevitable assault. As they walked, Valter spoke, his voice a low murmur that echoed through the corridors. "The Caracolak Empire's fleet arrived in our system 3 days ago. They have been probing our defenses ever since, testing our shields and attacking our outer settlements. Our scientists have been working around the clock to find a way to counter their dark energy, but so far, 'We've had no success. Our weapons are useless against their ships, and our shields are useless against their armor. Our scientists have been working tirelessly to find a way to counter their dark energy, but so far, 'We've had no success. Our weapons are useless against their ships, and our shields are useless against their armor. Our scientists have been working tirelessly to find a way to counter their dark energy, but so far, 'We've had no success. Our weapons are useless against their ships, and our shield is weakening with each passing hour. How long before the shield fails? Juno asked, her tone direct. Walter's expression darkened. If the attacks continue at their current rate, no more than 3 days. After that, they will be able to breach our atmosphere, and we will be at their mercy. We won't let it come to that, Alex said firmly. I'll need to see your shield generator and speak with your lead scientist. There has to be a way to reinforce the shield or at least buy us more time. They arrived at a large set of double doors, guarded by 2 armored sentinels. Walter nodded to them, and the doors swung open, revealing a massive control room filled with holographic displays and advanced equipment. At the center of the room was a large, circular console, where several Tyrionian scientists and engineers were gathered, their faces drawn with fatigue. This is our command center, Walter explained. From here, we monitor the status of the planetary shield, coordinate our defenses, and analyze the data from the ongoing attacks. Alex immediately moved towards the console, his sharp eyes scanning the readouts. The holographic display showed the planet's shield as a shimmering dome, with multiple red markers indicating points where the Caracolak forces were focusing their attacks. Each time one of these markers pulsed, the shield around Tyrion flickered slightly, a sign of the immense strain it was under. We've seen this kind of concentrated assault before, Leah said, her voice thoughtful as she studied the data. The Caracolak are trying to overload the shield by hitting it in multiple places simultaneously. If they succeed in creating a weak spot, they'll exploit it to breach the shield. We need to find a way to reinforce those weak points, Terran added, his fingers already moving over a nearby console, bringing up schematics of the shield generator. If we can redistribute power to those areas, we might be able to stabilize the shield for a while longer. One of the Tyrionian scientists, a man with graying hair and a haggard expression, stepped forward. We've tried that, but the strain on the generator is already near its limit. If we push it any further, we risk a total system failure. Alex considered this for a moment, his mind racing through possibilities. What about a secondary power source? Something to supplement the main generator and take some of the load off it. The scientist shook his head. We've explored that option, but there's nothing powerful enough on the planet to serve as a secondary source. The energy required to maintain the shield is astronomical. Alex's gaze shifted to the holographic display, focusing on the data streams that represented the shield's power fluctuations. He could see the pattern in the attacks, the methodical way the Caracolak were probing for weaknesses. They were precise, calculating, almost machine-like in their efficiency. It was as if they knew exactly where to strike and how to maximize the damage. Is there a way to create a feedback loop within the shield? Juno suggested, her mind working through the tactical implications. If we can redirect the energy from their attacks back at them, it might disrupt their pattern and buy us some time. It's possible, the scientist admitted, though his tone was hesitant. But it would be risky. If the feedback loop isn't perfectly calibrated, it could destabilize the entire shield. It's a risk we might have to take, Alex said, his voice steady. But before we decide on that, I want to explore all our options. We need to understand more about this dark energy they're using. Has there been any progress on that front? The scientist sighed heavily. We've been analyzing the energy signatures from their attacks, but it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It doesn't behave like any known form of energy. It's almost as if it's alive, constantly shifting and adapting. Every time we think we've identified a pattern, it changes. Alex nodded, his expression thoughtful. I'll need access to all of your data, every scan, every analysis, no matter how insignificant it might seem. We're dealing with something beyond conventional science, and we need to think outside the box. King Walter stepped forward, his expression one of resolve. Whatever you need, you will have it, Master Alex. Tyrion is counting on you. I'll need to see the shield generator in person, Alex said. And I want to inspect the weaponry you have at your disposal. If we're going to hold off the Caracolak, we'll need every advantage we can get. Of course, Walter replied. I'll have my chief engineer meet you at the generator. As for the weapons, we've been stockpiling everything we can, but as I said, they've proven ineffective against the Caracolak ships. Let me worry about that, Alex said, his tone reassuring. There's always a way to turn the tide. The meeting concluded, and Alex and his team were escorted to the shield generator, a massive structure located deep beneath the palace. The journey took them through a series of tunnels, each one reinforced with layers of thick, impervious material designed to protect against both conventional and energy-based attacks. The deeper they went, the cooler the air became, and the more the sounds of the outside world faded, until all that remained was the steady hum of the generator, growing louder with each step. Finally, they reached the heart of Tyrion's defense, a vast chamber filled with complex machinery and glowing conduits that pulsed with energy. At the center of it all was the shield generator itself, a colossal device that seemed to radiate power, its core a swirling vortex of light and energy. Engineers and technicians moved about the chamber, monitoring readouts and making adjustments, their expressions tense as they worked to keep the shield stable. "This is," it said the chief engineer, a tall, wiry man with a shock of white hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "The shield generator that's keeping the Caracolak at bay, but as you can see, it's already stretched to its limit. If we push it any further, it could fail." Alex finished for him, his gaze fixed on the generator. He could feel the immense power emanating from it, but he could also sense the instability, the barely controlled chaos at its core. It was like a dam holding back a raging flood one crack, and the entire system could collapse. "We need to reinforce the shield," Juno said, her tone decisive. "If we can't boost the generator's output, then we need to find another way to strengthen the defenses." "What about using the planet's natural resources?" Rook suggested, his deep voice thoughtful. "Tyrion is rich in minerals and rare elements. Could any of those be used to augment the shield?" The chief engineer shook his head. "We've already considered that, but the materials we have here aren't compatible with the shield's energy matrix. We would need something different, something we don't have." Alex frowned, his mind racing as he considered their options. What about an external power source, something off-planet? If we can't generate enough energy here, maybe we can bring it in from outside. The engineer looked skeptical. "You'd need something incredibly powerful, more powerful than anything we have in this system. And even if you could find it, there's no guarantee it would work with our technology." "It's a long shot," Alex admitted, "but it's worth exploring. In the meantime, I'll need to examine your weapon systems. If we can't hold the shield, we need to make sure we can fight them off when they break through." Valter nodded. "I'll have my weapons master meet you in the armory. If there's anything you can do to improve our chances, we'll do it." As they left the shield generator and made their way to the armory, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The Caracolak were relentless, and it was clear they had no intention of stopping until Tyrion was theirs. But Alex wasn't about to let that happen. He had faced impossible odds before, and he had always found a way to win. This time would be no different. The armory was a massive vault filled with racks of advanced weaponry, ranging from plasma rifles to energy cannons, to missiles capable of decimating entire fleets. Tyrion's military might was impressive, and under normal circumstances these weapons would be more than enough to fend off any attack. But the Caracolak were far from normal. Alex moved through the armory, examining the weapons with a critical eye. He could see the craftsmanship, the precision engineering, but he could also see the limitations. The Caracolak's dark energy would render most of these weapons ineffective, their advanced shielding absorbing or deflecting the attacks. "We need to think bigger," Alex said, turning to Terran. "What if we could modify these weapons to channel a different type of energy, something that could penetrate their shields?" Terran considered this, his mind already working through the possibilities. It would require significant modifications, but it's possible. We could try converting the energy output to a frequency that disrupts dark energy, but we'd need to test it first. "Then start the tests," Alex said. "We don't have much time." As Terran began working on the modifications, Alex turned to Leah. "I need you to coordinate with the other cities on Tyrion. We need to make sure everyone is prepared for what's coming. If the Caracolak break through, it's going to be a full-scale invasion." Leah nodded, already pulling up the communication channels. "I'll make sure they're ready. But we're going to need more than just weapons, we need a strategy." "And we'll have one," Alex said, his voice filled with determination. "But first, we need to understand more about this dark energy. If we can't find a way to counter it, none of this will matter." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Terran worked tirelessly to modify the weapons, using every bit of knowledge and ingenuity at his disposal. Leah coordinated the planetary defenses, ensuring that every city on Tyrion was prepared for the worst. Rook and Juno assisted where they could, their presence a steadying force in the chaos. But even as they worked, the tension in the air grew thicker. The attacks on the shield were intensifying, the flickering of the energy dome becoming more frequent. It was clear that the Caracolak were ramping up their efforts, determined to break through and claim Tyrion as their own. As the hours stretched into the night, Alex found himself alone in the armory, deep in thought. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, but he refused to let it overwhelm him. He had been in tight spots before. This was no different. He just needed to find the right angle, the one thing that would turn the tide in their favor. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from his communicator. It was Juno. "Alex," her voice crackled through the device, "we've got something. You need to see this." Alex didn't hesitate. He made his way back to the command center, where Juno, Terran, and the chief scientist were gathered around a console, their faces lit by the glow of the holographic display. "What is it?" Alex asked, his voice taut with anticipation. "We've been analyzing the latest data from the Caracollox attacks," Juno said, her tone urgent. "And we think we found a pattern, something that could be the key to understanding their dark energy." Terran gestured to the display, where a series of energy signatures were shown. "Look at this. Every time they hit the shield, the energy signature shifts slightly, but it always returns to a base frequency. It's like the dark energy is being regulated by something that's controlling it." "What could be controlling it?" Alex asked, his mind racing. The chief scientist leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in thought. "If I had to guess, I'd say it's a central core, something that generates and controls the dark energy for the entire fleet. If we could locate that core and disable it, we could neutralize their entire fleet," Alex finished, a spark of hope igniting within him. "But we don't know where the core is," Juno cautioned. "And even if we did, getting to it would be nearly impossible with the fleet's defenses." Alex's mind raced as he considered the possibilities. The Caracollox were methodical, precise. They wouldn't leave something as critical as a central core unprotected, but if they could find a way to disable it, even for a short time, it could give them the edge they needed. "We need more information," Alex said decisively. "We need to find a way to pinpoint the location of that core. Once we have that, we can figure out a way to disable it." "How do we find it?" Terran asked, his brow furrowing. "We lure them into a trap," Alex replied, his mind already formulating a plan. "We create a vulnerability in the shield, something that looks like a weak spot. When they concentrate their attacks on that area, we'll analyze the energy signatures and trace them back to the source." "It's risky," Juno said, her voice filled with concern. "If they realize what we're doing, they could destroy the shield before we have a chance to act." "It's a risk we have to take," Alex said firmly. "If we don't stop them now, Tyrion will fall. And if Tyrion falls, the rest of the galaxy won't be far behind." The room fell into a tense silence as the weight of Alex's words settled over them. But there was also a sense of resolve, a determination to see this through, no matter the cost. "We'll do it," Terran said finally, his voice filled with conviction. "We'll modify the shield to create a controlled vulnerability. But we'll need to coordinate with the other cities to make sure they're ready for the counterattack." "I'll handle that," Leah said, already moving to open the communication channels. "Let's get to work," Alex said, his voice steely with determination. "The fate of Tyrion and the galaxy depends on it." As the team dispersed to carry out their tasks, Alex remained in the command center, his mind focused on the challenge ahead. The Caracollox were powerful, relentless, and they had the advantage. But Alex had faced worse odds before, and he knew that the key to victory lay in outsmarting his enemy. This would be their last stand of battle, not just for Tyrion but for the future of the galaxy. And Alex intended to win. The hours that followed were a blur of activity, as Alex and his team worked tirelessly to implement their plan. Terran and the engineers modified the shield generator, creating a controlled vulnerability that would draw the Caracollox's attention. Leah coordinated the defenses across Tyrion, ensuring that every city was prepared for the inevitable counterattack. Rook and Juno monitored the situation, ready to respond to any threat. Finally, the trap was set. The modified shield flickered slightly, creating the illusion of a weakness, a crack in the armor that would be irresistible to the Caracollox. Now, all they could do was wait. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the command center grew thicker. Every eye was fixed on the holographic display, where the Caracollox fleet loomed ominously. They were still probing the shield, testing its defenses, but Alex knew it was only a matter of time before they made their move. And then, it happened. The red markers on the display began to cluster around the vulnerable area of the shield, intensifying their attacks. The energy signatures spiked, and the shield flickered dangerously, but it held. "They're taking the bait," Juno said, her voice taut with anticipation. Now Alex commanded. Trace the energy signatures, find the core. Terran's fingers flew over the console, his eyes fixed on the data streaming across the screen. Come on, come on. And then, there it was, a faint, but distinct signal, emanating from deep within the Caracolak fleet. It was the core, the heart of their dark energy, the source of their power. We've got it, Terran said, his voice filled with triumph. We've found the core. Send the coordinates to the fleet, Alex ordered. All units, prepare for a concentrated strike. We take out that core, and we end this. The command was relayed across Tyrion's defenses, and within moments, the planet's remaining forces were converging on the Caracolak fleet. It was a desperate gambit, but it was their only chance. As the battle raged in the skies above Tyrion, Alex watched with bated breath. The fleet's weapons had been modified to disrupt the dark energy, but it was still a long shot. The Caracolak's defenses were formidable, and the core was heavily guarded. But then, in a burst of light and energy, the core was hit. The dark energy that had been sustaining the Caracolak fleet flickered, then destabilized. The ships wavered, their shields collapsing, their weapons faltering. They're breaking apart, Juno said, her voice filled with a mix of disbelief and relief. We've done it, Terran breathed, his eyes wide with amazement. We've actually done it. But Alex remained focused, his gaze fixed on the display. The battle wasn't over yet. The Caracolak were still a threat, and they would fight to the last. Finish them off, Alex ordered, his voice cold and determined. No mercy. The command was executed with ruthless efficiency. Tyrion's forces, bolstered by the success of the strike, pressed the attack, cutting through the now vulnerable Caracolak fleet. One by one, the enemy ships were destroyed, until nothing remained but the remnants of their once mighty armada. It was over. The battle for Tyrion had been won. But as the cheers erupted in the command center, Alex felt no joy, no relief. He knew that this was only the beginning. The Caracolak Empire was vast, and they would not take this defeat lightly. They would return, and when they did, they would be more dangerous than ever. But for now, Tyrion was safe, and that was enough. As Alex stood in the command center, watching the remnants of the battle fade into the distance, he allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He had saved Tyrion, just as he had saved countless other worlds. But the cost was always the same, the burden of responsibility. The weight of knowing that as long as there were enemies like the Caracolak in the galaxy, his work would never be done. But that was the life he had chosen, and he would continue to fight to protect those who could not protect themselves for as long as he drew breath. The battle for Tyrion was over, but the war for the galaxy had only just begun, and Alex would be ready. The battle for Tyrion had begun long before the first shot was fired. It started in the minds of those who planned, those who prepared, and those who waited with bated breath for the inevitable clash that would determine the fate of their world. But now, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, bathing the capital city in a soft golden glow, the battle was about to become something more than just a looming threat. It was about to become a reality. The stillness of the early morning was shattered by the blaring of alarms, their shrill tones reverberating through the palace corridors and across the city. Citizens who had been anxiously waiting, hoping against hope that the conflict might pass them by, now realized with a sinking dread that there was no escape. The Caracolak had come, and they were here to destroy. From his vantage point in the palace's war room, Alex stood before a massive holographic display that dominated the room. The entire planet of Tyrion was laid out before him in intricate detail, every city, every outpost, every strategic point highlighted. The Caracolak fleet, represented by a swarm of red dots, was closing in on the planet from multiple vectors, their movements precise and unyielding. "They're not wasting any time," Juno remarked as she analyzed the display beside him. "They're coming in full force, and they're hitting us from every angle." "Just as we expected," Alex replied, his voice calm but with an underlying tension. He had been in countless battles, but this one was different. The stakes were higher, the enemy more formidable. There was no room for error. Aya, who had been coordinating the planetary defenses, stepped forward, her face set in a mask of determination. "All cities are on high alert. Civilian evacuations are underway, and our forces are in position. The shield is holding, but for how long is anyone's guess." "We don't need it to hold forever," Alex said, his eyes never leaving the display. just long enough. Rook, standing near the entrance, checked his weaponry one last time, his movements methodical and precise. He was a man of few words, but his presence was a source of reassurance for those around him. He had fought alongside Alex in some of the galaxy's most brutal conflicts, and he knew what was at stake. As the final preparations were made, King Valter entered the war room, flanked by his advisors. His face was drawn, the weight of the impending battle etched into every line and crease. Yet there was a fire in his eyes, a fierce determination that belied his age. Master Alex Valter said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Our people are ready to fight. Whatever happens today, know that Tyrion will not go down without a fight. Alex nodded, appreciating the king's resolve. We'll give them everything we've got, Your Majesty. But remember, our goal isn't just to defend, it's to win. With that, the room fell into a tense silence as the final moments ticked away. The Caraculak fleet was closing in, their ships ominous blots against the brightness of the rising sun. The first wave would hit the planetary shield any minute now, and when it did, the true test would begin. Contact Juno announced, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The holographic display showed the first of the Caraculak ships reaching the outer edge of the shield, their dark energy weapons flaring as they tested the planet's defenses. The shield flickered but held, its energy field absorbing the initial barrage. For a brief moment, there was a collective sigh of relief. But Alex knew better. This was just the beginning. They're probing for weaknesses, he said, his mind already working through possible countermeasures. They'll keep hitting us until they find one. And if they do, Valter asked, his voice laced with concern. Then we make sure they pay for every inch they gain, Alex replied, his tone unwavering. We can't let them breach the shield. If they do, it's over. The Caraculak's assault intensified, their ships closing in from all sides, unleashing wave after wave of dark energy against the shield. The air in the war room was thick with tension as the shield's integrity wavered under the relentless onslaught. Each hit caused the energy dome to ripple and flicker, its once steady glow now pulsing erratically. They're focusing their fire on the eastern quadrant, Leah observed, her fingers flying over the console as she relayed orders to the ground forces. If they break through there, they'll have a direct line to the capital. Reallocate power to the eastern quadrant, Alex ordered, his voice calm but firm. We need to buy more time. The engineers in the shield control room worked frantically to comply, redirecting energy from less pressured areas of the shield to the eastern quadrant. For a moment it seemed to work, the flickering diminished, and the shield stabilized. But the Caraculak were relentless. More ships joined the assault, their dark energy weapons growing in intensity. The shield began to buckle under the strain, and alarms blared as the energy levels dropped dangerously low. They're breaking through, one of the engineers shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Hold the line, Alex commanded, his gaze fixed on the display. We need just a little more time. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the war room, and the holographic display flared with static. When the image cleared, a massive breach had appeared in the eastern quadrant of the shield. The Caraculak ships, like predatory beasts sensing blood, surged towards the opening, their weapons aimed directly at the capital. They've breached the shield, Juno shouted, her voice filled with urgency. All forces, prepare for combat, Alex barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. This is it, hold your ground. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity as orders were relayed to the ground forces. Tyrion's defenses, a mix of advanced weaponry and seasoned soldiers, mobilized to meet the incoming threat. Anti-aircraft cannons swiveled into position, their barrels glowing with energy as they prepared to unleash a devastating barrage. Squadrons of fighter jets took to the skies, their engines roaring as they sped towards the breach. But the Caraculak were prepared. As they passed through the breach in the shield, their ships unleashed a torrent of dark energy, cutting through the air like a scythe through wheat. The first line of defense crumbled under the onslaught, the fighter jets exploding into fiery balls of debris, the anti-aircraft cannons reduced to molten slag. Fall back positions, Alex ordered, his voice resolute. We can't let them reach the city. On the ground, Tyrion's soldiers regrouped, retreating to their fallback positions in the city's outer defenses. The streets, once filled with life and activity, were now a battlefield, with barricades hastily erected and snipers taking positions on rooftops. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and the cries of the wounded, a grim reminder of the cost of war. Alex and his team made their way to the city's front lines, where the battle was already raging. The Caracolak had deployed ground troops hulking, armored soldiers who moved with terrifying precision, their weapons crackling with dark energy. Tyrion's forces, though valiant, were struggling to hold them back. The sheer power of the enemy's dark energy weapons was overwhelming, cutting through armor and shields as if they were nothing. "Rook, take the left flank," Alex commanded as they reached the front lines. "Juno, cover our right. Leah, coordinate the artillery strikes. I want those streets cleared." The team moved with practiced efficiency, each member falling into their assigned role without hesitation. Rook charged into the fray, his massive frame a blur of motion as he tore through the enemy ranks with a combination of brute force and expert marksmanship. Juno, ever the tactician, positioned herself on a rooftop, her sniper rifle picking off key targets with deadly precision. Leah, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of activity, her fingers flying over her communication console as she directed the artillery strikes. Explosions rocked the city as the artillery rained down on the Caracolak troops, reducing entire squads to nothing more than smoldering craters. But despite their efforts, the Caracolak continued to advance. For every enemy soldier they took down, 2 more seemed to take their place. The dark energy that powered their weapons also seemed to fuel their determination, driving them forward with a relentless ferocity. "We're being overrun," one of the Tyrionian officers shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. "We can't hold them back." "Hold the line," Alex shouted, his voice carrying above the din. "We've been in worse situations before. This is just another fight." But even as he said the words, he knew they were facing an uphill battle. The Caracolak were unlike any enemy they had faced before. Their mastery of dark energy gave them an almost supernatural edge, one that was proving difficult to counter. "Alex, we need to retreat," Juno called out, her voice laced with urgency. "If we stay here, we're going to be overrun." "No," Alex replied, his voice firm. "We can't give up the city. If they take the capital, Tyrion is lost." But as he spoke, another wave of Caracolak troops surged forward, their dark energy weapons cutting through the front lines like a hot knife through butter. The defenses were crumbling, and it was clear that they couldn't hold out much longer. "Fall back," Alex finally ordered, his voice filled with reluctant determination. "We'll regroup at the palace. This isn't over yet." The command was relayed, and Tyrion's forces began a controlled retreat, falling back to the palace's fortified walls. The Caracolak, sensing victory, pressed their advantage, their troops advancing with renewed vigor. As the defenders reached the palace, the gates slammed shut behind them, the heavy metal doors sealing with a resounding clang. The palace was Tyrion's last bastion, a fortress within a city, designed to withstand even the most brutal of sieges. But now, as the Caracolak closed in, it felt more like a tomb. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was tense. The war room was filled with the sounds of hurried conversations, the clatter of boots on the marble floor, and the constant hum of machinery as the defenses were readied for the final stand. Alex stood at the center of it all, his mind racing as he considered their dwindling options. The Caracolak had breached the city's defenses, and now they were at the palace gates. If they couldn't find a way to turn the tide, Tyrion would fall, and with it, any hope of stopping the Caracolak Empire's advance through the galaxy. "We can't hold out much longer," Juno said, her voice low but filled with an edge of desperation. "They're too strong." "There's always a way," Alex replied, though he knew the words sounded hollow. "We just need to find it." But even as he said it, he knew their options were running out. The Caracolak were too powerful, their dark energy too overwhelming. They had tried everything, every tactic, every strategy, but nothing had worked. The enemy seemed unstoppable. And then, as if in response to his thoughts, a new sound filled the air, a low, ominous hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the palace. It was a sound that Alex recognized immediately, one that sent a chill down his spine. "The core," he whispered, his eyes widening in realization. "They've brought the core here." Juno's eyes widened as well. "You think they're planning to use it against the palace?" Alex nodded, his mind racing. "It's their final play. If they can't take the palace by force, they'll use the core to unleash a massive dark energy pulse, one that will wipe out everything in its path." "And us with it," Juno finished, her voice grim. We have to stop them, Alex said, his voice filled with urgency. If they activate that core, it's over. But how? Leah asked, her voice filled with desperation. We don't even know where it is. They're moving it, Alex said, his eyes narrowing as he pieced together the enemy's plan. They're bringing it closer to the palace. If we can locate it before they activate it, we might be able to destroy it. But that means going back out there, Juno said, her tone heavy with the implication. Into the heart of the enemy. Alex nodded, his jaw set. It's our only chance. We'll take a small team, slip through their lines, and disable the core before they can use it. It's a suicide mission, Rook said, his voice low. Maybe, Alex admitted. But it's better than waiting here to die. There was a long moment of silence as the reality of the situation set in. They were out of options, out of time. But they were not out of hope, not yet. I'm with you, Juno said finally, her voice resolute. Me too, Leah added, her eyes filled with determination. Rook simply nodded, his expression grim but resolved. Then let's move, Alex said, his voice filled with the calm of a man who had made peace with his decision. We have a world to save. The team moved quickly, gathering their gear and making their way to the palace's underground tunnels, a network of passages that crisscrossed beneath the city, designed for just such an emergency. The tunnels were dark and damp, the air heavy with the scent of earth and stone. The only light came from the dim glow of their handheld lamps, casting long shadows on the rough walls. As they moved through the tunnels, the sounds of battle above them grew louder, the rumble of explosions and the crackle of energy weapons echoing through the stone. The Karakulak were relentless, their assault unceasing. Time was running out. Finally, they reached a hidden exit, a small, nondescript door that opened out into the heart of the city, just a few blocks from the palace. The streets were eerily silent, the buildings dark and empty. The only sound was the distant hum of the Karakulak's dark energy weapons, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked nearby. We need to move quickly, Alex said, his voice low. The core will be heavily guarded, but if we can get close enough, we can plant charges and take it out. The team moved through the deserted streets, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They stuck to the shadows, moving with the practiced ease of seasoned warriors. Every corner, every alley was a potential trap, but they couldn't afford to be cautious. They had a mission to complete, and time was not on their side. As they approached the area where Alex suspected the core was being moved, the atmosphere grew tense. The hum of dark energy grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. They were close, too close. Hold up, Alex whispered, raising a hand to signal a stop. He crouched low, peering around the corner of a building. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. In the middle of the street, surrounded by a phalanx of heavily armored Karakulak soldiers, was the core. It was a massive, pulsating sphere of dark energy, held within a containment field that crackled with power. The core was the source of the Karakulak's strength, a weapon capable of unleashing untold destruction. There it is, Juno whispered, her voice barely audible. How do we get past them? We don't, Alex replied, his mind racing. We need to draw them away from the core, create a distraction. And how do we do that? Leah asked, her eyes scanning the area for options. We give them something they can't ignore, Alex said, his voice firm. Rook, you and Leah set charges on that building over there. He pointed to a nearby structure. Bring it down on top of them. That should give us the opening we need. Rook and Leah nodded, moving quickly to carry out the plan. As they worked, Alex and Juno watched the Karakulak soldiers, waiting for the right moment to strike. Minutes ticked by, each one filled with mounting tension. The hum of the core grew louder, the dark energy within it pulsing with increasing intensity. They were running out of time. Finally, Rook signaled that the charges were set. Alex gave the nod, and Rook triggered the detonator. The explosion was deafening, the shockwave rippling through the streets as the building collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris. The Karakulak soldiers reacted immediately, turning their attention to the source of the blast, their weapons raised. Now, Alex shouted, and he and Juno sprang into action. They moved with the speed and precision of seasoned warriors, closing the distance to the core in seconds. The Karakulak were caught off guard, their attention divided between the collapsing building and the two intruders. Juno fired her weapon, her shots finding their marks with deadly accuracy. Alex followed suit, his blaster cutting down the soldiers who moved to intercept them. But despite their efforts, more Caracolak soldiers poured into the area, their dark energy weapons crackling with power. "We're not going to make it," Juno shouted, her voice strained with the effort of holding back the enemy. "We have to," Alex replied, his voice filled with determination. "Keep moving." They reached the core, its dark energy pulsing ominously. Alex quickly attached the charges, his hands moving with practiced speed. The hum of the core grew louder, the energy within it reaching a dangerous crescendo. "It's going to blow," Leia shouted from her position, her voice filled with urgency. "Get out of here," Alex ordered, his voice firm. "Now." Juno hesitated for a moment, her eyes locking with Alex's. But she knew better than to argue. With a nod, she turned and ran, following Leah and Rook as they retreated to a safe distance. Alex stayed behind, finishing the task. He set the charges, ensuring they were placed in just the right spots to cause maximum damage. The core's energy was reaching critical levels, the containment field flickering dangerously. With the charges set, Alex turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. The Caracolak soldiers were closing in, their weapons blazing. He ducked and weaved through the debris, using every ounce of his training to avoid the incoming fire. And then, just as he reached the edge of the blast zone, the charges detonated. The explosion was blinding, a wave of energy that rippled through the streets, obliterating everything in its path. The core, unable to contain the energy within it, imploded in a massive burst of dark energy. Alex was thrown to the ground by the force of the blast, his vision swimming as he struggled to regain his bearings. The air was filled with the sound of the explosion, the crackle of energy, and the distant cries of the Caracolak soldiers as they were consumed by the blast. For a moment, there was silence, a brief, eerie calm in the midst of the chaos. And then, the world came rushing back in a cacophony of sound and movement. The Caracolak soldiers, disoriented and weakened by the loss of the core, were in disarray. Their once coordinated assault had crumbled, their dark energy weapons faltering without the core to sustain them. Alex pushed himself to his feet, his body aching from the impact. He looked around, taking in the destruction they had wrought. The core was gone, its remains nothing more than a smoldering crater in the middle of the street. The Caracolak soldiers, those that hadn't been obliterated by the blast, were retreating, their morale shattered. "We did it," Juno said, her voice filled with disbelief as she and the others rejoined Alex. "We actually did it." Alex nodded, though his expression was grim. "It's not over yet. We need to regroup with the rest of the forces and finish this." The team made their way back to the palace, the streets eerily quiet in the aftermath of the explosion. The Caracolak's assault had been broken, but the battle was far from over. Tyrion's forces, emboldened by the destruction of the core, were rallying, pushing back against the remnants of the Caracolak troops. As they approached the palace, they were met by King Valter and the remaining defenders. The king's face was a mixture of relief and exhaustion, but there was also a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Master," Alex Valter said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You did it, you saved us." "We're not done yet," Alex replied, his voice firm. "There are still Caracolak troops in the city. We need to mop up the stragglers and secure the area." Valter nodded, his expression resolute. "We will not rest until every last one of them is gone." With the destruction of the core, the balance of power had shifted. Tyrion's forces, once on the brink of collapse, were now on the offensive. The Caracolak troops, deprived of their dark energy, were no match for the combined might of Tyrion's military and Alex's team. The battle raged on for several more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. One by one, the remaining Caracolak soldiers were hunted down and eliminated. Their once mighty fleet, now leaderless and without the core to sustain it, was scattered and destroyed by Tyrion's orbital defenses. Finally, as the last of the Caracolak ships was obliterated in a fiery explosion high above the planet, a wave of relief swept through Tyrion. The battle was over. Tyrion was safe. As the sun set on the capital city, its light casting long shadows across the war-torn streets, Alex stood with his team on the steps of the palace. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and ash, but there was also a sense of peace, a quiet, fragile peace that had been hard-won. "We did it," Juno said softly, her voice filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We actually did it." Alex nodded, though his expression was thoughtful. "We won this battle," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "But the war isn't over. The Caraculak will come back, and when they do, we need to be ready." King Valter stepped forward, his expression one of respect and gratitude. "Tyrion owes you a great debt, Master Alex. You and your team have saved our world. We will do whatever it takes to prepare for what comes next." "We'll be ready," Alex replied, his voice filled with quiet determination, "and when the Caraculak return, we'll be there to meet them." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Alex allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The battle for Tyrion had been a brutal, desperate fight, but they had emerged victorious. They had saved a world, and in doing so, they had struck a blow against the darkness that threatened the galaxy. But the war was far from over. The Caraculak Empire was still out there, still a threat to every world in the galaxy. And Alex knew that as long as that threat existed, his work was not done. But for now, Tyrion was safe. And that was enough. As he looked out over the city, the lights of the capital twinkling in the distance, Alex allowed himself a small, weary smile. They had won, and no matter what the future held, that was a victory worth celebrating. But even as the celebrations began, even as the people of Tyrion rejoiced in their hard-won freedom, Alex knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the Caraculak were only one of many threats that loomed on the horizon. But Alex was ready. He had faced the darkness before, and he would do so again. For as long as there were worlds to save, for as long as there were lives to protect, he would be there, standing on the front lines, fighting for the future of the galaxy. Because that was who he was, a hero, a warrior, a defender of the light. And he would never stop fighting. Not until the last shadow had been banished from the stars. The battle for Tyrion had been won, but the scars it left behind were deep and raw. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, revealing a city both battered and resilient, the air was heavy with the mingling sense of smoke, scorched metal, and a faint, lingering tang of dark energy. The capital city of Tyrion stood, but it was a city changed a city that had stared into the abyss and had somehow, against all odds, emerged on the other side. In the heart of the city, the royal palace, once a symbol of unyielding strength and opulence, now bore the marks of the recent battle. Sections of its once gleaming walls were scorched and pockmarked from the relentless assault. The grand spires, though still standing tall, were marred by cracks and missing stones. The beautiful gardens, which had once been a sanctuary of peace, were now littered with debris and the remnants of hastily erected barricades. Despite the damage, the palace remained a beacon of hope. It had withstood the worst the Caraculak could throw at it, and now, as the first rays of sunlight kissed its battered walls, it symbolized something far more enduring than wealth or power. Was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the people who called Tyrion home. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was one of controlled chaos. The war room, which had been the nerve center of the planet's defense, was now a hub of activity as leaders, advisors, and military personnel coordinated the post-battle operations. Communications were being re-established with the outlying cities and settlements, damage assessments were being compiled, and the wounded were being tended to with the utmost urgency. Amidst the flurry of activity, King Valter stood at the center of it all, his presence commanding yet comforting. He moved with a purpose, speaking with his advisors and issuing orders with a calm, authoritative voice. But beneath the veneer of composure, there was a weariness in his eyes, a weariness that came not just from the battle, but from the knowledge of what had nearly been lost. As he surveyed the room, his gaze eventually settled on a figure who had become as essential to the survival of Tyrion as any of its leaders. Alex stood at one of the holographic displays, deep in conversation with Juno, Laia, and Rook. His presence was both reassuring and commanding, and it was clear that the people around him looked to him not just as an outsider who had come to their aid, but as a leader in his own right. Master Alex Valter called out, his voice cutting through the low hum of conversations. Alex turned, his piercing blue eyes meeting the king's. There was a moment of mutual respect, a silent acknowledgement of what they had both endured and achieved. Alex stepped away from the display and approached the king, his gait steady despite the exhaustion that clung to him like a shadow. "Your Majesty," Alex greeted, inclining his head slightly in respect. Valter nodded in return, his expression grave but warm. "You've done more than save our world, Alex. You've given us hope when we had almost none left." Alex met the king's gaze steadily. Tyrion fought back with everything it had. You and your people did what was necessary to survive. I was just here to help. And help you did, Valter said, his voice filled with gratitude. But I know the cost of battles like these, Alex. I've seen it in the faces of my people. We may have won today, but the price has been steep. Alex nodded, understanding the weight behind the king's words. The price of victory was always high, and it was paid not just in lives, but in the toll it took on those who survived. Tyrion had been spared from annihilation, but it would never be the same. Rebuilding will take time, Alex said, his tone practical but laced with empathy. But Tyrion is strong. The people here are strong. They'll rise from this stronger than before. Valter offered a small, weary smile. You speak the truth, but it will be a long road. Many of our cities have been devastated, and our resources are stretched thin. We'll need to call upon our allies, rebuild our defenses, and ensure that we're never caught off guard like this again. And we'll help, Alex replied without hesitation. Tyrion isn't alone in this fight. The Caraculak are a threat to the entire galaxy. We'll need to work together, share what we've learned, and make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. Valter studied Alex for a moment, a thoughtful expression on his face. You're not just a warrior, Alex, you're a leader. One who sees the bigger picture. Alex's gaze remained steady. I've learned that in battles like these, the fight doesn't end when the enemy is defeated. It ends when those who survived can move forward and rebuild. The king nodded, his respect for Alex deepening with every word. And rebuild we shall. But first, there is the matter of honoring those who made this victory possible. Valter's gaze shifted to the far end of the war room, where a group of Tyrionian officials were gathered. Among them was a figure who had become a symbol of hope for the people, Princess Alara. Alara was a striking figure, her presence commanding yet graceful. She moved with the poise of royalty, but her demeanor was that of someone who understood the gravity of leadership. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her intelligence and strength of character that truly set her apart. As she conversed with the officials, her eyes occasionally flicked over to Alex, a look of quiet admiration and curiosity in her gaze. Valter noticed this and smiled slightly. Alara has been eager to meet you, Alex. She's heard much about you, as have all our people. Alex followed Valter's gaze and met Alara's eyes from across the room. There was a moment of silent acknowledgement between them, a mutual respect that transcended words. Then let's not keep her waiting, Alex said, his tone respectful. As they made their way across the war room, the conversations around them hushed slightly, all eyes turning to watch the interaction between the hero of Tyrion and the princess. When they reached her, Alara turned to face them fully, her expression warm and open. Princess Alara, Valter began, his voice filled with paternal pride. Allow me to introduce Master Alex, the man who played a crucial role in saving our world. Alara inclined her head in greeting, her gaze never leaving Alex's. Master Alex, it is an honor to finally meet you. My father has spoken highly of your bravery and skill, and I can see now that his words were not an exaggeration. Alex offered a small, respectful bow. The honor is mine, Princess. Tyrion has shown remarkable courage and resilience. Your people fought with everything they had. And they had the best possible leader to guide them, Alara replied, her tone sincere. Your actions have given us more than just a victory, Master Alex. You've given us hope, a hope that we can rebuild and protect our world from future threats. There's still much to be done, Alex said, his voice steady but humble. But with the right people working together, there's no challenge that can't be overcome. Alara nodded, her gaze searching Alex's for a moment. You speak with the wisdom of someone who has seen many battles, and who understands the true cost of war. I hope that in the days to come we can learn from your experience and ensure that Tyrion is better prepared for whatever the future holds. There's a lot we can do, Alex replied, his tone thoughtful. Strengthening alliances, sharing knowledge, improving defenses, it's all part of the process. But it's not just about preparing for the next battle. It's about creating a future where those battles are less likely to happen. Alara's eyes softened, and she offered a small smile. That's a vision I share, Master Alex. A future where our people can live in peace and prosperity, without the shadow of war hanging over them. Alex returned her smile, a rare warmth in his expression. It's a future worth fighting for, Princess. Before the conversation could continue, one of Valter's advisors approached, his expression urgent. Your Majesty, we've received word from the outer settlements. They've managed to repel the remaining Caracolak forces, but the damage is extensive. They're requesting assistance. Valter nodded, his expression turning serious. I'll attend to it immediately. Alex, Princess Alara, if you'll excuse me. The battle for Tyrion had been won, but the scars it left behind were deep and raw. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, revealing a city both battered and resilient, the air was heavy with the mingling scents of smoke, scorched metal, and a faint, lingering tang of dark energy. The capital city of Tyrion stood, but it was a city changed to city that had stared into the abyss and had somehow, against all odds, emerged on the other side. In the heart of the city, the royal palace, once a symbol of unyielding strength and opulence, now bore the marks of the recent battle. Sections of its once gleaming walls were scorched and pockmarked from the relentless assault. The grand spires, though still standing tall, were marred by cracks and missing stones. The beautiful gardens, which had once been a sanctuary of peace, were now littered with debris and the remnants of hastily erected barricades. Despite the damage, the palace remained a beacon of hope. It had withstood the worst the Caracolak could throw at it, and now, as the first rays of sunlight kissed its battered walls, it symbolized something far more enduring than wealth or power. Was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the people who called Tyrion home. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was one of controlled chaos. The war room, which had been the nerve center of the planet's defense, was now a hub of activity as leaders, advisors, and military personnel coordinated the post-battle operations. Communications were being re-established with the outlying cities and settlements, damage assessments were being compiled, and the wounded were being tended to with the utmost urgency. Amidst the flurry of activity, King Valter stood at the center of it all, his presence commanding yet comforting. He moved with a purpose, speaking with his advisors and issuing orders with a calm, authoritative voice. But beneath the veneer of composure, there was a weariness in his eyes, a weariness that came not just from the battle, but from the knowledge of what had nearly been lost. As he surveyed the room, his gaze eventually settled on a figure who had become as essential to the survival of Tyrion as any of its leaders. Alex stood at one of the holographic displays, deep in conversation with Juno, Laia, and Rook. His presence was both reassuring and commanding, and it was clear that the people around him looked to him not just as an outsider who had come to their aid, but as a leader in his own right. Master Alex Valter called out, his voice cutting through the low hum of conversations. Alex turned, his piercing blue eyes meeting the king's. There was a moment of mutual respect, a silent acknowledgement of what they had both endured and achieved. Alex stepped away from the display and approached the king, his gait steady despite the exhaustion that clung to him like a shadow. "Your Majesty," Alex greeted, inclining his head slightly in respect. Valter nodded in return, his expression grave but warm. "You've done more than save our world, Alex. You've given us hope when we had almost none left." Alex met the king's gaze steadily. Tyrion fought back with everything it had. You and your people did what was necessary to survive. I was just here to help. "And help you did," Valter said, his voice filled with gratitude. "But I know the cost of battles like these, Alex. I've seen it in the faces of my people. We may have won today, but the price has been steep." Alex nodded, understanding the weight behind the king's words. The price of victory was always high, and it was paid not just in lives, but in the toll it took on those who survived. Tyrion had been spared from annihilation, but it would never be the same. "Rebuilding will take time," Alex said, his tone practical but laced with empathy. "But Tyrion is strong. The people here are strong. They'll rise from this stronger than before." Valter offered a small, weary smile. "You speak the truth, but it will be a long road. Many of our cities have been devastated, and our resources are stretched thin. We'll need to call upon our allies, rebuild our defenses, and ensure that we're never caught off guard like this again." "And we'll help," Alex replied without hesitation. "Tyrion isn't alone in this fight. The Caracolak are a threat to the entire galaxy. We'll need to work together, share what we've learned, and make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Valter studied Alex for a moment, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You're not just a warrior, Alex, you're a leader. One who sees the bigger picture." Alex's gaze remained steady. "I've learned that in battles like these, the fight doesn't end when the enemy is defeated. It ends when those who survived can move forward and rebuild." The king nodded, his respect for Alex deepening with every word. "And rebuild we shall. But first, there is the matter of honoring those who made this victory possible. Valtor's gaze shifted to the far end of the war room, where a group of Tyrionian officials were gathered. Among them was a figure who had become a symbol of hope for the people, Princess Alara. Alara was a striking figure, her presence commanding yet graceful. She moved with the poise of royalty, but her demeanor was that of someone who understood the gravity of leadership. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her intelligence and strength of character that truly set her apart. As she conversed with the officials, her eyes occasionally flicked over to Alex, a look of quiet admiration and curiosity in her gaze. Valtor noticed this and smiled slightly. Alara has been eager to meet you, Alex. She's heard much about you, as have all our people. Alex followed Valtor's gaze and met Alara's eyes from across the room. There was a moment of silent acknowledgement between them, a mutual respect that transcended words. Then let's not keep her waiting, Alex said, his tone respectful. As they made their way across the war room, the conversations around them hushed slightly, all eyes turning to watch the interaction between the hero of Tyrion and the princess. When they reached her, Alara turned to face them fully, her expression warm and open. Princess Alara, Valtor began, his voice filled with paternal pride. Allow me to introduce Master Alex, the man who played a crucial role in saving our world. Alara inclined her head in greeting, her gaze never leaving Alex's. Master Alex, it is an honor to finally meet you. My father has spoken highly of your bravery and skill, and I can see now that his words were not an exaggeration. Alex offered a small, respectful bow. The honor is mine, Princess. Tyrion has shown remarkable courage and resilience. Your people fought with everything they had. And they had the best possible leader to guide them, Alara replied, her tone sincere. Your actions have given us more than just a victory, Master Alex. You've given us hope, a hope that we can rebuild and protect our world from future threats. There's still much to be done, Alex said, his voice steady but humble. But with the right people working together, there's no challenge that can't be overcome. Alara nodded, her gaze searching Alex's for a moment. You speak with the wisdom of someone who has seen many battles, and who understands the true cost of war. I hope that in the days to come we can learn from your experience and ensure that Tyrion is better prepared for whatever the future holds. There's a lot we can do, Alex replied, his tone thoughtful. Strengthening alliances, sharing knowledge, improving defenses, it's all part of the process. But it's not just about preparing for the next battle. It's about creating a future where those battles are less likely to happen. Alara's eyes softened, and she offered a small smile. That's a vision I share, Master Alex. A future where our people can live in peace and prosperity, without the shadow of war hanging over them. Alex returned her smile, a rare warmth in his expression. It's a future worth fighting for, Princess. Before the conversation could continue, one of Valtor's advisors approached, his expression urgent. Your Majesty, we've received word from the outer settlements. They've managed to repel the remaining Caracolak forces, but the damage is extensive. They're requesting assistance. Valtor nodded, his expression turning serious. I'll attend to it immediately. Alex, Princess Alara, if you'll excuse me. The days following the battle for Tyrion were filled with a flurry of activity, a mixture of rebuilding, recovery, and strategizing for the future. The capital city, though battered and scarred, buzzed with the energy of a people determined to rise from the ashes. Every street was alive with the sound of construction, as workers and engineers toiled day and night to repair the damage wrought by the Caracolak invasion. The smoke that once filled the air was slowly replaced by the scent of fresh mortar, and the charred remains of buildings gave way to the framework of new structures. Yet amidst the physical reconstruction, there was also a deeper, more personal rebuilding taking place, one that concerned not just the city of Tyrion, but the bond between two very different worlds. Alex had made the decision to stay on Tyrion, at least for the time being. The battle might have been over, but the work of ensuring Tyrion's long-term survival and prosperity had only just begun. And in the days that followed, as he worked side by side with Tyrion's leaders and citizens, he found himself becoming more and more invested in the planet's future. In the heart of the city, the royal palace continued to serve as the nerve center for the planet's recovery efforts. The war room, once a place of tense strategy sessions and battle plans, had transformed into a hub of collaboration and planning for the future. It was here that Alex spent most of his days, coordinating with King Valtor, Princess Alara, and the other key leaders of Tyrion to ensure that every aspect of the planet's recovery was progressing smoothly. But despite the endless meetings and discussions, there was one relationship that began to grow and deepen in ways that neither had anticipated: the bond between Alex and Princess Alara. It began with small, quiet moments shared in the midst of the chaos. A glance exchanged across the war room, a brief conversation in the hallways, a shared smile at the end of a long day. There was a natural ease between them, a mutual respect that had been forged in the fires of battle and was now blossoming into something more. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and planning sessions, Alara invited Alex to join her for a walk through the palace gardens. The gardens, once damaged by the battle, had been meticulously restored by the palace's gardeners, and now they were once again a place of beauty and tranquility, a sanctuary from the demands of leadership. As they strolled through the garden's winding paths, surrounded by the scent of blooming flowers and the soft glow of lanterns, Alara turned to Alex, her expression thoughtful. "You've been working tirelessly since the battle," she said, her voice soft and warm. "I think you've earned a moment of peace." Alex smiled, appreciating the gesture. "It's been a long few days," he admitted, his tone reflective. "But there's still so much to be done. Tyrion's recovery is going to take time, and I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to help." Alara nodded, her gaze drifting to the flowers that lined the path. "You've already done so much, Alex, more than we could ever have asked for. But I also know how important it is to take a step back, to breathe, and to remember why we're fighting so hard in the first place." Alex followed her gaze, taking in the beauty of the garden. It's easy to get caught up in the battle, in the urgency of the moment. But you're right, there's more to this than just the fight. There's the life we're trying to protect. Alara's smile was gentle, and there was a softness in her eyes that made Alex's heart beat a little faster. "That's what I admire about you, Alex. You see the bigger picture. You're not just here to fight a battle, you're here to help us build a future." "There's a lot worth fighting for here," Alex replied, his tone sincere. "Tyrion is a special place. And it's not just the planet, it's the people. The way they've come together, the way they've fought for their home. It's inspiring." Alara's gaze met his, and for a moment, there was a silence between them, filled with an unspoken connection that had been growing stronger with each passing day. "I feel the same way," Alara said softly. "I've always loved my home, but seeing it through your eyes, it's made me appreciate it even more. And it's made me realize how important it is to protect what we have." They continued walking, the path leading them to a small pond in the center of the garden. The water was still and reflective, the surface dotted with the soft glow of lanterns and the occasional ripple from a gentle breeze. They stopped at the edge of the pond, and Alara turned to face Alex fully, her expression serious but filled with warmth. "There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about," she began, her voice steady. "It's about the future both for Tyrion and for us." Alex's brow furrowed slightly, intrigued. "What is it?" Alara hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "Tyrion is at a crossroads. The battle we fought was just the beginning. We need to strengthen our defenses, rebuild our alliances, and ensure that we're ready for whatever comes next. But we can't do it alone." She took a step closer to him, her gaze unwavering. "I believe that you're meant to be a part of Tyrion's future, Alex. Not just as an ally, but as something more. My father has spoken of the tradition how a hero who saves our world is granted the right to marry a member of the royal family." Alex's heart skipped a beat at her words, but he remained silent, sensing that there was more she wanted to say. "But this isn't just about tradition," Alara continued, her voice softening. "This is about choice. My choice. And I want you to know that whatever decision I make, it will be because it's what I truly want, not because of any obligation or tradition." There was a long silence as Alex absorbed her words. He had known about the tradition, of course Valter had mentioned it shortly after the battle. But hearing Alara speak of it now, in this quiet, intimate setting, made it feel different, more personal, more real. "Alara," Alex began, his voice measured but sincere, "I respect your right to choose. And I would never want you to feel obligated to do anything because of tradition. But I also want you to know that I care about Tyrion, and I care about you. If there's a way that I can be a part of this world's future, I would be honored." Alara's eyes softened, and she reached out to take his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "Then let's take our time, Alex. Let's get to know each other, see where this path leads. We've both been through so much, and there's still so much more ahead of us. But I believe that whatever the future holds, we'll face it together." Alex squeezed her hand gently, a feeling of warmth spreading through him. "I'd like that, Alara, more than you know." They stood there for a while longer, hand in hand, watching as the stars reflected in the pond's surface. The night was peaceful, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant hum of the city as it continued its quiet recovery. In that moment, Alex felt a sense of contentment that he hadn't experienced in a long time, a feeling of belonging, of finding a place where he could make a difference, not just as a warrior, but as a part of something larger. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Alara spent more and more time together, both in their official capacities as leaders and in more personal, private moments. They worked closely on the planet's recovery efforts, strategizing ways to rebuild Tyrion's infrastructure, strengthen its defenses, and forge new alliances with other worlds. But they also made time to simply enjoy each other's company, to walk in the gardens, to share meals, and to talk late into the night about their hopes, their dreams, and their visions for the future. As they got to know each other better, Alex found himself increasingly drawn to Alara's strength, her intelligence, and her compassion. She was a leader in every sense of the word, but she was also kind, thoughtful, and deeply committed to her people. And as their bond grew stronger, Alex began to realize that his feelings for her went beyond mere respect or admiration. They were something deeper, something that had the potential to change the course of his life. Alara, for her part, found herself captivated by Alex's wisdom, his courage, and his unwavering sense of duty. He was unlike anyone she had ever known, strong, yet humble-focused, yet thoughtful. He had a way of seeing the bigger picture, of understanding the complexities of leadership and war, that both inspired and reassured her. And as their relationship deepened, she found herself looking forward to their time together, cherishing the moments of connection and understanding that passed between them. One evening, as the sun set over the city, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Alex and Alara found themselves once again in the palace gardens. They had just finished another long day of meetings and planning sessions, and they both felt the need to unwind, to breathe in the fresh air, and enjoy the tranquility of the garden. As they walked, Alara turned to Alex, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about what the future holds, Alex? Not just for Tyrion, but for yourself?" Alex considered her question for a moment before replying. "I used to think that my future was always about the next mission, the next battle. I was always focused on what needed to be done, on the threats that needed to be dealt with. But since coming to Tyrion, I've started to think that maybe there's more to life than just the fight." Alara smiled softly, her gaze warm. "I'm glad to hear that. You've given so much of yourself to protect others, Alex. You deserve to find happiness, to have a future that's about more than just war." "And what about you?" Alex asked, his tone gentle. "What do you see in your future?" Alara's smile widened, and there was a hint of playfulness in her eyes. "I see a future where Tyrion is safe, where our people can live in peace and prosperity. And I see a future where I'm surrounded by people I care about, people who make my life richer and more meaningful." Alex felt his heart swell at her words, and he couldn't help but reach out to take her hand. "That's a future I'd like to be a part of, Alara." Alara's eyes met his, and in that moment there was a connection between them that went beyond words. It was a bond that had been forged through shared experiences, through trust and understanding, and it was a bond that had the potential to become something truly special. "I'd like that too," Alex, Alara said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "More than you know." They continued walking, hand in hand, the path leading them to a secluded spot in the garden, where a bench sat beneath a canopy of flowering vines. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blossoms, and the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze created a peaceful ambience. They sat down on the bench, the closeness between them both comforting and exhilarating. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did, but there was also a sense of something deeper, an unspoken understanding that they were on the verge of something new, something that could change both of their lives. As the night deepened and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Alara leaned her head against Alex's shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her lips. Alex wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close, and for a moment they simply sat in silence, savoring the warmth and closeness they shared. "This feels right," Alara murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Being here with you, it just feels right." Alex smiled, his heart swelling with a mixture of emotions: contentment, affection, and a deep sense of connection. "It does," he agreed, his voice filled with warmth. "It really does." They sat together for a while longer, the night air cool and refreshing, the garden a sanctuary of peace and tranquility. In that moment, it didn't matter what challenges lay ahead, what battles might still need to be fought. All that mattered was the bond they had forged, the connection that had grown stronger with each passing day. As the evening drew to a close, and they reluctantly made their way back to the palace, Alex couldn't help but feel that he had found something truly special on Tyrion, something that went beyond the mission, beyond the fight. He had found a connection, a sense of belonging, and a future that he had never anticipated. And as he walked beside Alara, their hands still clasped together, he knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. Because in each other, they had found something worth fighting for, something worth protecting, something worth building a future around. And that, more than anything, was a victory worth celebrating. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Alex and Alara continued to deepen. They became not just partners in the work of rebuilding Tyrion, but partners in life, sharing in each other's joys, challenges, and dreams. Their relationship became a source of strength for both of them, a refuge in the midst of the chaos and demands of leadership. The people of Tyrion, too, began to see the bond between their princess and the hero who had saved their world. There was a growing sense of approval and admiration, a recognition that the union between Alex and Alara was not just a symbol of their planet's resilience, but also of the hope and unity that had emerged from the darkness. And as the weeks passed, the city of Tyrion continued to rebuild, its streets once again filled with the sounds of life and activity. The scars of battle remained, but they were slowly being healed, replaced by new growth, new construction, and new opportunities. But even as the city flourished, Alex and Alara knew that their work was far from over. The threat of the Caracolak still loomed, and there were other dangers lurking in the galaxy, dangers that could threaten not just Tyrion, but all the worlds that Alex had sworn to protect. One afternoon, as they walked through the bustling streets of the capital, Alex and Alara discussed the next steps in their plan to ensure Tyrion's long-term security. They had already begun reaching out to other worlds, forging alliances and sharing information about the Caracolak and the dark energy that powered their weapons, but there was still much to be done. "We need to establish a coalition," Alex said, his tone thoughtful. "A network of worlds that can work together to defend against the Caracolak and any other threats that might arise. If we're going to protect Tyrion and the rest of the galaxy, we need to be united." Alara nodded, her expression serious. "I agree. And I think Tyrion can play a key role in that coalition. We have the resources, the technology, and the experience. But more importantly, we have the will to lead." Alex smiled, admiring her determination. "You're a natural leader, Alara. Your people are lucky to have you." Alara returned his smile, a hint of playfulness in her eyes. "And I'm lucky to have you by my side, Alex. Together, I believe we can achieve great things." They continued walking, the streets of Tyrion alive with the energy of a city that had been reborn. The people greeted them with smiles and nods of respect, their gratitude and admiration evident in their expressions. It was clear that Alex had become more than just a hero to them. He had become a part of their world, a part of their future. As they reached the palace gates, Alara turned to Alex, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about something, Alex. About the future." "What is it?" Alex asked, curious. Alara hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "I know that the tradition of Tyrion is to offer a hero the right to marry a member of the royal family, but I don't want to follow that tradition just because it's expected. I want to follow it because it's what I truly want. And Alex, I want to spend my life with you." Alex's heart skipped a beat at her words, and for a moment he was speechless. But then, as he looked into Alara's eyes and saw the sincerity, the warmth, and the love there, he knew that there was only one answer. "Alara," he began, his voice steady and filled with emotion, "there's nothing I want more than to spend my life with you. You've become a part of me, a part of who I am, and I can't imagine my future without you." Alara's smile was radiant, and in that moment the bond between them felt unbreakable, stronger than any challenge, any threat, any battle that might lie ahead. "Then it's settled," Alara said softly, her voice filled with happiness. "We'll face the future together." They stood there for a moment, lost in each other's gaze. the world around them fading into the background. It was a moment of pure connection, of two souls coming together in a way that was both powerful and beautiful. And as they embraced, Alex felt a sense of peace, of contentment, that he had never known before. He had spent his life fighting for others, protecting those who could not protect themselves. But now, for the first time, he had found something worth fighting for in a different way, something that gave his life new meaning, new purpose. The bond between them was not just a union of two people, but a union of two worlds that had come together in the face of adversity and had emerged stronger, more united, and more determined than ever. And as they began to plan their future together, Alex knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them with courage, with determination, and with the unbreakable bond that had grown between them. Because together they were stronger. Together they were unstoppable. And together they would build a future that was not just about survival but about hope, about love, and about the enduring power of unity. The weeks that followed were filled with preparations for the future, not just for the coalition that Alex and Alara were working to establish, but also for their own union. The people of Tyrion, who had come to admire and respect both Alex and Alara, eagerly awaited the announcement of their engagement, and when it finally came, the entire planet erupted in celebration. The news spread quickly, not just across Tyrion, but to the other worlds that Alex and Alara had begun to forge alliances with. It was a symbol of hope, a sign that even in the darkest of times, love and unity could prevail. And it was a reminder that the bonds between people, between worlds, were the most powerful force in the galaxy. As the day of their wedding approached, the palace was filled with a sense of joyous anticipation. The gardens were once again in full bloom, the halls were adorned with flowers and banners, and the people of Tyrion prepared to celebrate the union of their princess and the hero who had saved their world. On the morning of the wedding, as the sun rose over the capital, casting the city in a golden light, Alex stood in his chambers, adjusting the ceremonial armor that had been prepared for him. It was a blend of Tyrionian tradition and the practical, battle-hardened gear he was accustomed to wearing, a symbol of his dual role as both a warrior and a leader. As he finished fastening the last piece of armor, there was a knock at the door, and Rook entered, a rare smile on his usually stoic face. "You clean up nicely," Rook said, his tone teasing but filled with genuine warmth. Alex chuckled, turning to face his friend. "I could say the same about you. I don't think I've ever seen you out of combat gear." Rook shrugged, his smile widening. "Today's a special occasion, and besides, it's not every day that I get to stand beside my friend as he marries a princess." Alex's smile softened, and there was a moment of quiet camaraderie between them. Rook had been with him through some of the toughest battles of his life, and knowing that he was here today, standing by his side, meant more to Alex than he could put into words. "Thanks, Rook," Alex said, his voice filled with gratitude. "For everything." Rook nodded, his expression serious but filled with respect. "You've earned this, Alex. You've given so much to others. It's time you had something for yourself." As they prepared to leave the chambers and make their way to the ceremony, Alex felt a sense of calm wash over him. There had been so many battles, so many challenges, but today was about something different. Today was about love, about unity, and about the future. The ceremony was held in the palace's grand hall, a magnificent space adorned with flowers, banners, and the flags of both Tyrion and the worlds that had allied with it. The room was filled with dignitaries, leaders, and citizens, all gathered to witness the union of Alex and Alara, a union that symbolized the bond between two worlds. As Alex stood at the front of the hall, waiting for Alara to make her entrance, he felt a sense of anticipation, a feeling that something truly extraordinary was about to happen. The music began to play, a soft, melodic tune that filled the hall with warmth and beauty, and all eyes turned to the grand doors at the far end of the room. When the doors opened, revealing Alara, there was a collective gasp of admiration. She was a vision of grace and elegance, her gown a flowing masterpiece of Tyrionian design, adorned with intricate patterns that symbolized unity, strength, and love. Her hair was adorned with delicate flowers, and her eyes, filled with emotion, were focused solely on Alex. As she made her way down the aisle, escorted by King Valter, Alex felt his heart swell with love and pride. Alara was not just a princess, not just a leader, she was the woman he had come to love, the person he wanted to spend his life with. When Alara reached the front of the hall, King Valter placed her hand in Alex's, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and emotion. "Take care of each other," he said softly, his voice filled with paternal warmth. "We will," Alex replied, his voice steady but filled with emotion. As the ceremony began, the hall was filled with a sense of reverence, of deep respect for the bond that was being formed. The officiant, a wise elder of Tyrion, spoke of the traditions of the planet, of the importance of unity, love, and commitment. And as Alex and Alara exchanged their vows, pledging to stand by each other through whatever challenges the future might bring, there was not a dry eye in the room. The vows were simple, yet powerful words that spoke of love, of partnership, and of the unbreakable bond that had grown between them. I, Alex, pledge to stand by your side, Alara, through every challenge, every joy, and every trial that life may bring. You are my partner, my confidant, and my greatest love. Together we will build a future filled with hope, with strength, and with love. I, Alara, pledge to stand by your side, Alex, through every challenge, every joy, and every trial that life may bring. You are my partner, my confidant, and my greatest love. Together we will build a future filled with hope, with strength, and with love. When the vows were complete, and the officiant pronounced them united, the hall erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the grand space like a wave of joy. Alex and Alara smiled at each other, their hands still clasped, their hearts filled with love and the promise of a future together. As they turned to face the crowd, the cheers grew louder, the people of Tyrian celebrating not just the union of their princess and their hero, but the strength and resilience of their world. The reception that followed was a grand celebration, filled with laughter, music, and dancing. The palace gardens were transformed into a magical setting, with twinkling lights, flowing fountains, and tables laden with delicious food and drink. The people of Tyrian, along with their allies from other worlds, mingled and celebrated, united by a sense of hope and joy. Alex and Alara moved through the crowd, greeting their guests, sharing in the happiness of the day. Everywhere they went, they were met with smiles, congratulations, and well wishes for their future. It was a day of pure joy, a day that would be remembered not just by them, but by all who were present. As the evening drew to a close, and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Alex and Alara found themselves once again in the palace gardens, the same spot where they had shared so many quiet moments together. The sounds of the celebration still echoed in the distance, but here, in this secluded corner of the garden, it was just the two of them. They sat together on the bench, the same one where they had shared their first conversation about the future. The night was cool and clear, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. "This has been the happiest day of my life," Alara said softly, her head resting on Alex's shoulder. "I can't believe how far we've come, how much we've been through together." Alex smiled, his arm wrapped around her, holding her close. "It's been a journey, that's for sure. But I wouldn't trade a single moment of it." Alara lifted her head to look at him, her eyes filled with love and contentment. "Neither would I. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for us, for Tyrian, for our people, and for us." "We'll face it together," Alex said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Whatever comes, we'll stand by each other's side." Alara smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. "I know we will, and I know that as long as we're together, there's nothing we can't accomplish." They sat together in the garden, the night sky stretching out above them, filled with the twinkling lights of distant stars. It was a moment of pure peace, a moment that felt timeless, as if the world had paused just for them. And as they sat there, hand in hand, Alex felt a deep sense of fulfillment, of contentment. He had found a place where he belonged, a place where he could make a difference, not just as a warrior, but as a partner, a leader, and a husband. The future was still uncertain, still filled with challenges and unknowns, but for the first time in a long time, Alex felt ready to face whatever came his way, because he wasn't facing it alone. He had Alara by his side, and together they would build a future filled with hope, with strength, and with love. And as the night deepened, and the stars continued to twinkle overhead, Alex knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life, a chapter filled with possibilities, with adventures, and with the unbreakable bond that had brought two worlds together. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the battles they had fought or the enemies they had defeated. It was about the love they had found, the unity they had forged, and the future they would build together. And that, more than anything, was the greatest victory of all. The months following the wedding of Alex and Alara were filled with both the joy of new beginnings and the challenges of forging a future for Tyrian and its allies. The union between the princess and the hero had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of unity, not just for Tyrian but for the entire galaxy. Their marriage had cemented the bond between Earth and Tyrian, creating a powerful alliance that stood as a bulwark against the darkness that still loomed on the horizon. The coalition that Alex and Alara had envisioned was beginning to take shape. Representatives from worlds across the galaxy had come to Tyrian to discuss the formation of an interplanetary alliance, a network of worlds committed to mutual defense, shared knowledge, and the pursuit of peace. The once scarred city of Tyrian's capital had transformed into a hub of diplomatic activity, its streets filled with the vibrant colors and diverse cultures of visitors from every corner of the galaxy. The palace, too, had undergone a transformation. What had once been a fortress bracing for attack was now a center of diplomacy, a place where leaders gathered to discuss the future of their worlds. The war room, once filled with the tension of impending battle, now buzzed with the energy of collaboration and planning. The air was filled with the sounds of languages from a dozen different planets, the hum of holographic projectors displaying star maps and trade routes, and the quiet murmur of negotiations that would shape the galaxy's future. But amidst the flurry of activity, Alex and Alara remained grounded, their bond as strong as ever. They were more than just leaders, they were partners, working together to guide Tyrion through this new era. Their days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and diplomatic receptions, but they always made time for each other, finding moments of quiet connection amidst the chaos. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the city in golden light, Alex and Alara found themselves in a small chamber within the palace that had become their private retreat, a place where they could escape the demands of leadership, if only for a short time. The room was cozy and filled with personal touches. Books from both Earth and Tyrion lined the shelves, a soft couch nestled by the window, and a small table set with 2 cups of steaming tea. Alara sat on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, a data pad in her hand. She was reviewing the latest reports from the coalition talks, her brow furrowed in concentration. Across from her, Alex leaned against the windowsill, gazing out at the city below, his thoughts drifting as he sipped his tea. "Anything interesting?" Alex asked, glancing over at Alara with a small smile. Alara looked up, her expression softening as she met his gaze. "Just the usual discussions about trade agreements, shared defense protocols, and the logistics of integrating our technologies. It's all important, but it's a lot to take in." Alex chuckled, moving to sit beside her on the couch. "Sounds like you've been handling it all pretty well. I don't know how you managed to keep track of everything." Alara smiled, leaning against him as she set the datapad aside. "I have a good partner to help me, and besides, I know how important this is, not just for Tyrion but for the entire galaxy. We're building something that could change the course of history." Alex wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "And you're doing an incredible job. This coalition wouldn't be coming together without your leadership." Alara tilted her head to look up at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "We're doing this together, Alex. I couldn't do it without you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of their responsibilities momentarily lifted as they simply enjoyed each other's presence. It was in moments like these that they found the strength to keep going, to face the challenges that lay ahead. Their bond was not just a source of comfort, it was a source of power, a wellspring of resilience that had carried them through the darkest times and would continue to do so. Eventually, Alara sighed softly, her thoughts turning to the future. "Do you ever wonder what comes next? After the coalition is formed, after we've secured our worlds against the Caracolak and any other threats that might arise?" Alex considered her question, his expression thoughtful. "I think about it sometimes. The galaxy is vast and there will always be challenges, always something that needs to be done. But I also think that we're creating a foundation for something lasting, something that can endure beyond just our lifetimes." Alara nodded, her gaze distant as she contemplated his words. "I want to believe that too. I want to believe that we're building a future where our children, and their children, can live in peace, a future where they don't have to fight the same battles we fought." Alex smiled, the thought of a peaceful future filling him with hope. "And I think we're on the right path. It won't be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. But with the right people, with the right determination, we can make it happen." Alara's smile was radiant, and she reached up to touch his cheek, her fingers warm against his skin. "I believe in us, Alex. I believe in what we're doing. And as long as we're together, I know we can face whatever comes our way." They shared a quiet moment, their foreheads resting against each other's, the warmth of their connection filling the room. It was a moment of peace, of understanding, and of unspoken promises for the future. The sound of a soft chime interrupted their moment, signaling that their next meeting was about to begin. Alara sighed, reluctantly pulling away. "Duty calls." Alex chuckled, giving her a quick kiss on the forehead before standing up. "Duty always calls. But we'll get through it." They made their way to the palace's main hall, where representatives from several worlds were waiting to discuss the latest developments in the coalition talks. The hall was filled with the low murmur of conversation, the atmosphere charged with a mix of anticipation and determination. As they entered, the room fell silent, all eyes turning to the couple, who had become the face of this new era of cooperation and unity. Alex and Alara moved with the confidence of leaders who had earned the respect and trust of those around them, their presence a reminder of the strength that came from their partnership. The meeting began with a discussion of the coalition's progress so far. Representatives from various worlds reported on the state of their defenses, the integration of their technologies, and the progress of trade agreements that would ensure the prosperity of all members. It was clear that the coalition was gaining momentum, and there was a palpable sense of optimism in the room. One of the representatives, a tall, stern-faced man from a world known for its advanced military technology, stood to address the group. "The Caracolak threat has united us in ways we could never have imagined," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "But we must remember that this is only the beginning. The galaxy is filled with dangers, and we must remain vigilant. Our strength lies in our unity, and we must continue to build on the foundation we've created." Alara nodded in agreement, her gaze sweeping the room. "He's right. The Caracolak are not the only threat we face. But by working together, by sharing our knowledge and resources, we can create a future where our worlds are safe, where our people can thrive. This coalition is more than just a defensive pact, it's a commitment to a better future for all of us." The room echoed with murmurs of agreement, the representatives nodding in approval. The coalition was not just about survival, it was about building something greater, something that could withstand the challenges of the galaxy and create a lasting legacy. As the meeting continued, Alex and Alara listened to the discussions, offering their insights and guidance where needed. It was clear that their vision for the future was resonating with the other leaders, and that the coalition was becoming a force to be reckoned with. When the meeting finally adjourned, the representatives left the hall with a renewed sense of purpose, their steps filled with the determination to see this coalition succeed. Alex and Alara remained behind, taking a moment to reflect on the progress they had made. "We've come a long way," Alex said, his voice filled with pride. "But there's still so much to do." Alara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We've laid the groundwork, but now we need to make sure that it holds. The coalition is strong, but we need to ensure that it remains so, even after we're gone." Alex smiled, his hand finding hers and giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We will. And we'll make sure that the next generation is ready to carry it forward. We're building something that will last." Alara's smile was warm, and she leaned into him, her voice soft. "I know we are, and I'm so glad we're doing it together." They shared a quiet moment, the weight of their responsibilities tempered by the strength of their bond. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and unknowns, but they were facing it together, and that made all the difference. As the days turned into weeks, and the coalition continued to grow, Alex and Alara found themselves at the center of a movement that was reshaping the galaxy. The alliance they had forged was more than just a military pact, it was a network of worlds committed to mutual prosperity, peace, and the protection of their shared values. Their work took them to other worlds, where they met with leaders, oversaw the integration of technologies, and ensured that the coalition's goals were being met. They traveled across the galaxy, from the bustling trade hubs of the core worlds to the remote outposts on the fringes of known space, always with the same purpose: to build a future that was secure, prosperous, and united. But no matter where their duties took them, they always returned to Tyrian, a place that had become not just a home, but a symbol of what they were fighting for. The capital city, once scarred by battle, was now a thriving center of culture, trade, and diplomacy. The streets were filled with the vibrant energy of a people who had overcome adversity and emerged stronger for it. The palace, too, had become a beacon of hope, a place where leaders from across the galaxy gathered to discuss the future, to share knowledge, and to forge new alliances. It was a place where the past was honored, but where the focus was always on the future. And through it all, Alex and Alara remained united, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They were partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other, challenging each other, and always working together to achieve their shared vision. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their private chambers, watching the sun set over the city, Alara turned to Alex, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about what it all means?" she asked, her voice soft. "All the work we've done, the alliances we've forged. Do you ever wonder what our legacy will be?" Alex considered her question, his gaze focused on the horizon. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "I think about the impact we're having and what it will mean for the generations that come after us. But I also think that our legacy isn't just about the big things, the coalition, the alliances. It's also about the small moments, the connections we've made, the people we've touched along the way." Alara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I hope that when people look back on what we've done, they see that it wasn't just about power or control. It was about creating a better future for everyone, for Tyrian, for Earth, for every world in the galaxy." Alex smiled, his hand finding hers and giving it a gentle squeeze. "They will, Alara. They'll see that we fought for something greater than ourselves, and they'll see that it was all worth it." Alara leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I'm so glad we're doing this together, Alex. I couldn't imagine a better partner, a better person to share this journey with." Alex wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "Neither could I. Whatever the future holds, I know we'll face it together." As they sat together, watching the last rays of sunlight fade from the sky, Alex felt a deep sense of contentment. The future was still uncertain, filled with challenges and unknowns, but he knew that they were on the right path, that they were building something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Alex knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more battles to fight, more challenges to overcome, but they were ready. They had each other, they had their allies, and they had a vision for the future that would guide them through whatever lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless worlds and endless possibilities, and as long as they stood together, Alex and Alara knew that they could face anything. Because their bond was not just about love, it was about partnership, about unity, and about the unwavering determination to create a future where peace and prosperity were not just dreams but realities. And that, more than anything, was the legacy they would leave behind, a legacy of hope, of strength, and of the enduring power of unity. As the night deepened and the stars continued to shine overhead, Alex and Alara sat together in peaceful silence, the weight of their responsibilities momentarily lifted as they simply enjoyed each other's presence. The journey ahead would be long, but they were ready. Because together they were unstoppable. And together, they would build a future that was worthy of the worlds they had fought so hard to protect. The stars twinkled in the sky, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. And as Alex and Alara gazed out at the horizon, they knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them with courage, with determination, and with the unbreakable bond that had brought them together. Because in the end, it was not just about the battles they had fought or the enemies they had defeated. It was about the love they had found, the unity they had forged, and the future they would build together. And that, more than anything, was the greatest victory of all,